Good evening and welcome to the third round of the SRHI GT4 Season 2 here at the fantastic, wonderful, brilliant Imola circuit, 40 kilometres east of Bologna, one of the only anti-clockwise circuits in the world. Built in 1953, a semi-permanent layout, then became famous for hosting the San Marino Grand Prix over the preceding 60 years. Some iconic corner names and hopefully some very exciting racing tonight as we get back underway in this championship following a couple of weeks off for some endurance races. But tonight we get going again for this rather exciting series indeed. I'm joined in the commentary box by Steve Proudley, who has been on the ride with me so far this season. Our first two races taking place at Brands Hatch and Suzuka, but we make the trip to Imola this evening, Steve. A unique circuit, but one that definitely lends itself to these GT4 cars.
Yeah, good evening, Tim. It's great to be back on the stream with you. And yeah, very exciting and enthusiastic intro from you there regarding Imola. So I'm guessing it's one of your favourite tracks. But yeah, it's good to see at the moment on the practice server the guys are experiencing some dry conditions, which is unusual for the SRHI Championships. But you know, the GT4s, then they're an interesting class. It's a very hotly contested class, and I think around this circuit it is going to be a very interesting qualifying session, but more importantly a very exciting race, I think.
So as Steve alludes to there, a 30-minute qualifying session will precede a hour-long race. But here are the results from the previous round at Suzuka. Danny de Swart taking victory in Mercedes, leading the AM category, interestingly enough. None of the pro class drivers able to get the better of him over the 1 hour adventure in Japan. Then Nicholas Malott and Yannick Valenduk rounded out the podium. Tim Krull in fourth ahead of Michael Huttman, Dennis Verkman, Alexander Delors, Andre Brendel, Patrick Tractor, who rose up the ranks from 23rd on the grid to finish 9th at Suzuka, ahead of Dimitri Schenk, who rounds out your top 10. And then it's all the way down to 11th for Evan Atafas to be the next AM driver, scoring 30 points in his championship challenge, ahead of Olivier Anderson, Rick Lotterman, Mark Dieters, and Denise Pope, rounding out the top 5 in AM, but the top 15 overall. And then as we look at the championship, it is indeed the winner at Suzuka, Danny de Swart, who streaks clear at the top, obviously leading the AM class, but here the overall challenge as well. Tim Krull, 55 points see him lead the pro category, second in the championship. And then Nicholas Malott in the Porsche in third. And then further down the order, Steve, the man that we so often speak about in this series and in other GT4 racing is Sem Spenkelink, who obviously didn't race last time out of Suzuka. He was pretty dominant in the first race at Brands Hatch, and I think we're going to have our eyes on him to see how he performs this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely a driver that just does never ever gives up. And I mean, at Brands Hatch in the rain, he was so dominant. I mean, he didn't really put a foot wrong, if memory serves me correctly. But you know, we've seen him in some of the GT3 racing, GT4 racing, endurance racing. He does, you know, sometimes when he's suffered some bad luck, he's been turned around, he's had off-track excursions. But you can bet your bottom dollar, as it were, that he'll be back on the track. And he fights, and he's never far away when the checkered flag falls. He's usually, you know, he does make a good comeback. A very, very determined driver, and I admire him for that. He's one of my favourites on the grid, I have to say.
Favourites indeed for being quick, but when you're racing against him, I doubt he's a favourite to have alongside you on the track. But Sem, a brilliant racer, but also this entire grid is jam-packed full of talented sim racers and drivers really getting to grips with these GT4 cars. Obviously, this is the second season, so we're starting to see some title challenges and indeed rivalries emerge. But as we now cut to qualifying, you can see the cars out on track. They've had just over 2 minutes of running so far. Here's Arjen Lermans, and there we cut to Sem Spenkelink in the 74 KTM Crossbow out on track for the first time. Pole to checkered flag victory for him at Brands Hatch in the rain, but it looks like it's sunny at the moment here at Imola, which is going to make things a little easier for the drivers indeed. But as he rounds the first corner at Tamburello, through the left-right chicane, using all of the curb and then some, and even running further over the curb on the right-hand side on the exit. That might have cost him some valuable time, and indeed invalidated his lap time as he comes through the chicane at Villeneuve and up towards the hairpin at Tosa. Steve, a quick word on this track. I mean, it is iconic for a reason, isn't it? These corners are well known, much loved, and equally as much a challenge. There's some really exciting sequences here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some very famous combinations as they go through Tamburello, obviously, and into Villeneuve. That's a very Villeneuve is quite a difficult one. They sort of fast left and into a slightly tighter right, but there is only really one line through Villeneuve, and you get it wrong and you're onto the gravel, and you sort of slow and you're sort of off-footed as it goes into Tosa, into the braking zone, and then obviously the same at the top of the hill with Piratella. Again, it's sort of one ideal line through there. If you run wide, you're looking at track limits at the very least, and if not, you're having to also potentially lift off and give somebody the inside line. And Acqua Minerale again. It's just the list goes on, but it's very difficult, I think, to put the perfect lap together around here. But Sem in the KTM, I think that KTM in GT4 class within the ACC is a very, very underrated car. We have seen it in this championship go well. We've seen it in other championships go well. I'm not quite sure whether it's just down to the fact you've got to be pretty much on it to get the most out of it, and it's maybe a difficult car to extract that absolute maximum performance out of it. As you were quite right, Sem must have dirtied that lap because he's got no time on the board still as it stands. But yeah, I think it's a good car, but I think it's maybe hard to extract it. But Sem seems to be on it. Another one we've just cut to Luke Pound. He seems to be he's a force to be reckoned with, I think, within the GT4s himself, and Tim Kroll. There's another name, I think, Patrick Tractor. There's a handful of names in here that could be fighting for that podium, just depending on the start, because again, we're talking about the corners around Imola and the track itself. They head into Tamburello for the first time at a good old rate of knots with the rolling start in the GT4 class.
Yeah, well, Luke Pound we saw take pole position last time out at Suzuka, and then on the final lap he ran out of fuel, dropping him right down the order, and he surrendered what would have been a very strong finish inside the top 10. But let's see where he can put himself on the grid at the moment, as it's Yannick Valenduk who is currently top of the times, and Tim Kroll, who we cut to at the moment in the 933 Porsche Cayman. He really has been up at the sharp end this entire season, has Kroll, and I think we're going to see some more of the same. And he's one of those drivers best placed to take the fight to Spenkelink in that KTM. But as he rounds the final corner at Ravazza and heads through the Variante Bassa towards the start-finish line to break the timing beam and set what I believe is his first lap, and there he goes straight to the top of the pile.
That's close.
A 1:55, but yeah, it's close, isn't it, Steve? Less than 300ths of a second already separating the top two.
Yeah, I mean, Vale is 4/10 up at the moment as he comes across the line, so he's going to close that gap. I don't think he's going to improve his position, but he's must have been a dirty lap, to be fair. He must have invalidated that somewhere around there, because his time actually didn't register, so he was showing 4/10 up. But as I was saying there, just on the build-up, that it's very, very difficult to get that perfect lap. It's very easy to run wide and invalidate the lap, just exceed those rumble strips, that fraction too much, and then your lap just does not count. And that will be all the more important when it comes to the race, obviously, because people that have watched regularly now are familiar with the fact that you are. The game allows you 3 track cuts, but any more than that you will get a drive-through penalty. So with 60 minutes of hard-fought racing with the GT4s, I think we might see a few drive-throughs this evening.
Well, your comment there about track limits as well, the circuit obviously made famous by hosting Grand Prix racing, but in the modern era it hosts bike racing as well. You've had a World Superbikes, I believe, visit here countless times, and I think that is what's made these curbs flatter, isn't it? They have to abide to the rules of both 4-wheel racing and 2-wheel racing, and that nature of the curbs allows these drivers, and to be honest, encourages them, doesn't it, to run out and use all of the track width. And that's risky, though, like you say. That's the margins you play with, because you can invalidate that lap time. But as I've just seen in the timing board, Steve, that we've got currently tied times at the top of the standings. Tim Krul and Alexander Delors on 1 minute 55.17. But just as I point that out, Steve, Tim Krul goes a little bit quicker and stretches out the gap.
Interestingly, Delors also 2/10 up, so he might just close that gap back down again if he can keep this lap clean and keep this time gained advantage. He's just lost a tenth, so he's only a tenth up, but he's looking good. He's still green, and so I think he's going to close the gap up, if not jump it. It's going to be very, very tight again if this was a clean lap indeed. And as he crosses the line, yeah, indeed he does. He takes it, but again by a very, very narrow margin. This is getting good.
So the gap at the top was at one point 27 thousandths of a second. Then they were tied for time. And now once again, the pole margin is 27 thousandths of a second. They're definitely leaving it all out there on the track. And there's no gap between them at the moment, which is exciting to see. But Yannick Valenduk here in the 301 BMW. He's had a mixed venture so far this season. We really saw him further up the order last time out Suzuka, getting a podium in third. Overall actually was a fantastic result for him from 6th on the grid, but at Brands Hatch in the wet he struggled, 13th on the grid to 10th. So I get the feeling that there's a lot more to come from this BMW, and this evening, as we see, he's currently third, which would be his best qualifying position of the season. So excited to see how he can do it, and he's going to be starting along Sem Spenkelink as it stands with over 20.5 minutes to go. With Suke Vervat leading the AM class in 7th at the moment. But Steve, these sessions, half an hour to set your best qualifying time. Drivers are choosing to break this up when they'll go out, low fuel, give it absolutely everything, and return to pit lane and maybe just cast their eye over what laps they're doing and the lap times around them and have a quick think about where they can go faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, I'm glad you said provisionally, because he's up on his time at the moment. His Valenduk, he's about 1/10 up, so that gap's going to get even tighter between the top three if this indeed again was a clean lap as he approaches the start-finish line to register this lap. I'm expecting this gap to go down. He's still showing a slight advantage, although he's lost a little bit of time, and he's improved by half a tenth. So that's what we're looking at the moment, the smallest of margins, so literally the top three now split by a tenth. But yeah, interesting what you're saying. They've got another 20 minutes of qualifying now, so the half an hour session. That's a long time for qualifying, because it does give the drivers a little bit more time to go out there, just test things out, see how the track grip is, get a feel for the track, put a little bit more fuel in. Maybe some of them stay out there and just keep hot lapping, because different drivers will attack this length of qualifying differently. Some of them will go out, try to do 2, 3 or maybe 4 laps. Some of them will go out and split the qualifying into 2 sessions, maybe, as we just seen Vale running very, very wide there, and that will indeed have invalidated his lap. But yeah, some of them will split it into 2 15-minute sessions, because speaking from personal experience, that's probably what I would do, because I do tend to, some drivers will just build up to that best lap. But the track conditions will be changing. It is saying that the track is optimum at the moment, but that's works within a broad sort of margin of parameters there, because the track grip may be around about 95%, but it will be increasing up to that magic 100% mark all the time. So the grip will be getting better, and believe you me, 1% of grip gained is a definite advantage. So I think with 18 minutes to go, we'll definitely see those times either get even closer at the top or get even quicker. We may see somebody into the 49s, who knows?
Yeah, that track status that ACC provides is great in letting you know what the rough band of pace is out there on the track, what the track's going to be offering you, but it doesn't give you that fine detail. And a 1% margin would certainly give you pole position at the moment if you're Tim Krul in second place. So let's see how this qualifying progresses with just under 18 minutes remaining. Dimitri Schenk here in the number 8 Ginetta, currently 14th in the order as it stands, and 18th place qualifying at Brands Hatch and 17th at Suzuka. So at the moment he's bettering his best performance this season, which is what we like to see. Some improvement from these drivers as they learn the cars, learn the competition, and learn how to extract the most from these unique and individual GT4 machines. But getting slightly slippy on the exit of Tozo, like Schenk lost all of the time he had fought to gain. Martin Kessel's here in the 82, skip racing Aston Martin, coming to cross the line, and he looks to be going quicker. Let's see where he can go from 30th at the moment. As he crosses the line, he stays 30th, so improved on that time, but we'll be looking to go even better on the next one. Back to Vale as he goes through the Variante Alta, the one really clunky section of the track. It seems to be such a flowing circuit, and then you have to kind of just wing it really and pray that you get through those high curbs at the chicanes safely. It's one of those locations where you can invalidate your lap time, but as he brings the Porsche Cayman round the final 2 corners at Ravazza and onto the start finish straight. I say it's a straight, it curves round to the right hand side, so you often find drivers cutting that green asphalt on the right there, as Vale does, nearly gets all 4 wheels off the track and into that section, and right up to the wall again here as he crosses the line and improves to a 50.6. Let's see if he can go even faster. It looks like he was about to abort back to pit lane. The Tafas here in the 75 Aston Martin, making his way through the Variante Alta, and you can take a lot of curb there, can't you, Steve? I've just seen that the couple of drivers really sending it over the top of those sleeping policemen we sometimes refer to them as, but each of these cars will take and accept those curbs in different ways, won't they? You know, a car like the Aston Martin might be particularly good at it, but someone like the Ginetta or the KTM might struggle with the high curbs.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them will ride the curbs almost like they're not there. Some of them will react badly to it, and you will have to be careful. That every single one of these cars has its own strengths and weaknesses within the class, and obviously let's not forget all these drivers will put their own setups on the cars just to get them feeling how they want to drive them, because the GT4s we have seen again in this championship and other championships. The driving styles of them do vary quite a lot. You get some people that will really take the car by the scruff of the neck and throw it at the corners and really attack the track. Some drivers will just try to keep everything smooth, tidy, and almost make it look effortless while they're doing the fast laps. So very much so that every car is different. You could be driving the Aston Martin that is on screen now, jump into somebody else's Aston Martin, and it could feel like an absolute alien machine just down to the setups. And riding those curbs, as you said there, they're taking a lot of curb there. Through Piratella, sometimes they do they get out quite wide, and it's a dangerous thing to do, because if you start to unsettle the car and you're already running wide, there's only one way to go if you get it wrong, as we see Pound just getting it all wrong there. Yeah, absolutely. It almost sucks you off the track, as it were. You're literally you're just not going to be circulating anymore, and it's going to take you basically just to where you don't want to be, and the times are invalidated. And during the race, in the GT4 class, mistakes in the GT4 class can quite often cost you 3, 4, 5, 6 and more places, just depending how tight you are together. But we have seen drivers losing a place in the top 10 and having to rejoin at the back of the field, as it were.
So here we have Dennis Berkman on screen, a couple of cars rejoining from pit lane as the number 5 Porsche Cayman winds up for another hot lap. But as we dip under the halfway mark of this qualifying session, still at the top of the standings, it's Alexander Delors ahead of Tim Kroll, Yannick Balenduk and Zander Vale, with Mikkel Hutman, Sem Spenkelink in 6th ahead of Nicholas Malott, Luke Pound 8th, pole sitter from Suzuka, Suke Vervat in 9th ahead of Frank Hopp here, who all gets caught up in traffic there through Tamburello and finds himself off to the left-hand side at the first corner, but he'll be heading straight back to pit lane, and with 13 minutes to go, still plenty of time to better his lap. But Dennis Berkman doing exactly what you were alluding to there, Steve, getting all over the curb on the exit of Piratella. It just looks to have unsettled that Cayman through this technical run down through Aqua Minerale.
Yeah, absolutely. He was 4/10 up, and he lost all of that just from that little bit run wide. He has gained a little bit back now. He's about a 10th up on his time, but a 10th is only really enough to maybe get him into that top 10 position, but not much further than that. He was 4, 5/10 up, so he's lost a lot, and he's got a lot of time to gain. It's there in the lap, so potentially with the pace he's got, if he can put a lap together, we could see Workman into the sort of top 6 anyway, I would say.
So let's see what he can do then. Rounding the final corner at Ravazza, trying to get the Cayman settled as he heads onto the start-finish straight. It looks like he's opting for a slightly different line to we've seen other drivers who choose to run all the way over to the right-hand side and the curb. But as he crosses the line, he's unable to improve. Or if he did, that was a dirtied lap, wasn't it? A 51.1 would have seen him jump up slightly, but probably invalidated that lap time in the instant we saw him running off at Piratella. But winds up to go again for another one through Tamburello and down towards the Villeneuve chicane. Got to brake and turn and get the car stopped again and turn back the other way. And the car seems to rock and sway. It's very difficult if your setup is too soft for the car to just move around underneath you and not want to go where you want it to. But as he runs out of Tosa, he looks slightly squirrely on the exit up the hill towards Piratella. He'll stay over to the right hand side of the track and brake down into third gear, chuck the car in, run over this curb on the right hand side, but not too far as to invalidate the lap. Downhill into Acqua Minerale. Here you're going to be turning and braking at the same time. The car loaded up on the left hand side. You get the car in and uses a lot of curb on the exit there, but that's another place where you can have your lap time invalidated. Then a short shoot up towards the Variante outer where you go right and left and use as much curb, but it looks like he caught the slide on the right hand side curb, and that's really cost him that lap, and we can see he's backed right out of it. But the Variante Altas, Steve, it's so tricky, and where it's positioned in the lap, you're halfway through, you're over halfway around the lap, and you can see your delta, maybe think you're up on your split time, and then you find yourself in this chicane and suddenly all your time's disappearing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a relatively steady lap as well. I did, my own opinion was that he was being pretty cautious through some of those corners with a steady turning and not too aggressive on the power, and he was still a couple of tenths up until that final mistake. So yeah, I think he knows there's a lot of time there to be made. He knows he can improve, but a man that is improving at the moment is Lewis Clark, and again, if this is a clean lap, he's currently 8 tenths up, which will jump him all the way up to the top 10.
So let's see where Clark can find himself in amongst the action as he rounds the final kink and towards the start-finish line to break the timing beam. And we see Clark does improve and right up towards the top 10, 0.06 of a second in fact off that 10th place position currently occupied by Hop in the 7 Cayman. But Clark on his first appearance in the series certainly showing himself to have the pace. We see Luke Pound getting all kinds of crossed up on the exit of the Villeneuve chicane, and he's off into the gravel indeed. And I think there are a few jokes, weren't they? As we see Patrick Tractor getting caught up.
He was up as well.
On his time. That's just that's difficult, isn't it, Steve, with such a tight circuit like this at Imola. You can find yourself in amongst the traffic, and especially with 33 cars out there this evening, it's going to be about finding that track space.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Difficult that he was coming into a braking zone there. He'd obviously maybe gained a bit of an advantage by grabbing a slipstream as we go back towards Patrick now, just to see if he can do a better lap this time and improve, because there is time within his lap. He is capable of going faster. But yeah, he may have gained a slipstream, but the advantage he gained in the slipstream cost him in the braking zones. I think he was a little bit unsighted, and he just seemed to miss his braking point and ran very, very deep as he went through Variante Alta. But he's back on it now. He is up by a tenth as we speak at the moment, very early in the lap, so he'll be keen to keep it all tidy. Currently in P13. Your thoughts, Tim, on the Ginetta around Imola? Do you think it's going to be competitive here? Do you think the top speed disadvantage is going to cause it a problem tonight?
I think that is going to be the only weakness for the Ginetta, and particularly with such a long run from the final corner at Ravazza all the way down to Tamburello. It seems to take an age anyway, let alone if you're in the Ginetta, which I'd say that is the only real issue with this Ginetta, is that it lacks that top end speed. It's very good in the technical section, so down here into Acqua Minerale, hoping Patrick doesn't prove me wrong and fires himself off. No, but look, it looks very flat, very controlled. The car seems to squat down nicely in these technical sections. Obviously, it's a lot lighter than the majority of the GT4 field. The only problem as well is it doesn't take curbs too nicely. So through Variante Alto, I wonder if he has to adapt his line to not find himself, moved offline and moved off the optimum position. So yeah, the Ginetta is a really good car. Sometimes in wheel-to-wheel combat, it can struggle because it is just that, it's a little bit smaller. You can find yourself getting hip checked, as we see Tractor running wide on the exit of Ravazza, the first part, and indeed costing himself a little bit of time on the run to the line. But let's see if he can improve as he drags the car through to the timing line. And he's 14th at the moment, and he stays 14th. And look at that, it was, wow, 21 thousandths of a second slower. So I wonder if he was up on his time there, Steve, and just dropped it at the final corner.
He did indeed. He was around about 3/10 up, so he'll be kicking himself at the moment as the clock is running down with 6.5 minutes left. But Spenkelink has jumped up to 4th place on his last lap while we were talking and watching Patrick there. I just noticed at the corner of my eye that Sem went up 2 places, so he has improved. He's currently a 10th up now, so he's looking for another small improvement. A 10th might not make a positional change for him, but it does mean that all those guys at the top are very, very close on time, and if this translates into the race, then it's going to be a very, very close race, I think.
So into the final 6 minutes of this qualifying session, Spenkelink on the run to the line. He currently is the best part of 4/10 off pole position, but he does improve on that lap, a 150.376. Sees him go quicker but not move anywhere up the timing order, so he will want to gather it together and see if he can go one final time as the clock ticks down. But Michael Hutman here in the 84 Camaro on the run to the line, and he goes 5th, so he jumps up a position, knocking Xander Vale off that spot at the moment with a very quick lap indeed, only 3 thousandths of a second off Spenkelink's time. So we're seeing a lot of drivers start to push themselves towards the top of the order. Evan Atafas here in the 75 Aston Martin rounds the Variante Alta, uses all of the track on exit and just manages to get the car back on the racing surface before the runoff ends there, and he's on the grass. But on the run down towards Ravazza, looking nice and settled is the Aston Martin through the left and using all the curb, but opting to get off it as quick as possible. And on the run to the line, we'll see how good this lap time has been for Natafas, with 4.5 minutes to spare. Currently in 20th position, 1.8 seconds is the deficit to pole. And it looks like he didn't improve on that time. No, indeed. Well, it was a 51.6, but it must have been a lap time invalidated due to track limits abuse. So you can see the pace is there for a lot of these drivers, and it's just those track limits catching them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was up on his time, as you said, and he did go faster, but obviously it's just those track limits. And we're looking at Vale at the moment. Currently he's roundabout level with his time, so if there's any improvement, it's only going to be very minor. And he's currently in 6th place. He's half a second off pole, sort of 2.5 tenths off 5th place. 5th place to pole, though, literally 2.5 tenths. Tim, that's insanely close, isn't it, really? I mean, 2.5 tenths of a second, what does that look like?
Oh, it's nothing, is it? You could throw a blanket over those guys. They're so close together, and that's really not much time at all. And I'm sure if you saw two cars out on the track separated by, well, you'd certainly look twice if you saw 5 cars separated by 2.5 tenths of a second. That's very close indeed. So let's see if things close up as we head into the final 3 minutes. So drivers that are out on track will be potentially have 2 more laps in the offering, but those in pit lane might be trying to size up a last ditch attempt to improve their position on the grid. But Evan Tafas here doing a good job. I wonder if he's going quicker as he heads into Ravazza.
Yeah, he's 3 tenths up at the moment. As long as it's all clean, he's sort of verging between 3 and 4 tenths, so it's a very, very good lap. It's going to better his lap by some margin, his best lap by some margin. If he's clean, it looks like he's trying, he's keeping it nice and tight, and he's going to come across the line. I think we might see a positional change here, and indeed up to 15th place for Evan, and he's been working hard on that for the last 3 or 4 laps, so it's good to see the reward at the end of that, and he's now jumped himself up into the top 15, which is a very, very respectable place to be within this field.
So as we look at the timing order as it stands, as we were passing comment there, Steve, on just how close it is, the top 9 separated by a second, but from 10th all the way down to, wow, outside the top 23 is the next second bracket. So that shows how close that order is outside of the top 10 positions. It really is close, and a minor gain could see you benefit multiple positions on the starting grid as Dennis Werkman crosses the line, I think, to start another lap. He's currently 12th position on the grid at the moment, with Clark in front of him. So again, look, he only needs to find really a 10th and he'll see himself shoot up 2 places and to 10th position. It's such fine margins, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and at the moment, believe it or not, it is showing as he's 4 tenths faster on this lap, so he's definitely got time in his lap. He knows it. He'll be looking at his green sector times now. His overall relative time will be green. It'll be telling him what his prospective lap will be if he maintains his pace, and that will be telling him that he's going to jump certainly potentially up to 9th position, maybe even 8th if he can improve a bit more. Definitely on it. Having said that, he has just made a slight mistake somewhere there, and he's lost that time. He's just about matching his best lap as we speak at this moment in time, so we've put the old curse on him maybe by coming to him. We should have just left him alone, as he's I think he's just backed out of this lap now maybe, and he's just he's realised he's not going to beat his current best time.
He's got a bit of traffic in front as well. That's Boyd in the 59 McLaren, who is on a lap, I believe, at the moment. So let's see whether Werkman decides to keep at it or just save himself some time, a little bit of space to the McLaren in front, and go again. But as he rounds Ravazza, it doesn't look like he's holding off at all. He's really closed up on the back of that McLaren 570S, and he's going to have a fantastic slipstream on the run to the line. This might be exactly what he needs to boost his time. He's 1.3 seconds off pole at the moment, and on that time he gains a 10th. But I thought Werkman would maybe find some more time in that final dash to the line, but that sees him hop up to 10th position as the timer hits 0 and the checkered flag is out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult to find anybody else that's actually really up on a time at the moment. It's everybody's pretty much done their best laps. Lee Mosley, who we're with at the moment, is showing us sort of 6-7 tenths up, so this is a big improvement from this guy at the moment. If it's a clean lap, and it looks like he's trying very hard to bring it home, and he's currently showing around about 7 tenths faster, keeping it tight to the Armco there as he's looking for the line. It's not going to come soon enough for him. He's really looking for, and yes, he jumps up to P13, so a great lap from him, but I think that just about finishes qualifying for this race tonight.
Well, fantastic last-ditch effort indeed from Lee Mosley to see him jump up to 13th place, which will be his best qualifying by 6 positions so far this season. So that's a really good job from the Aston Martin driver. But going into this race, the grid order as it stands, it's Alexandra Delors in the 49 Cayman, who takes pole position by the margin of just over 1.5 tenths to Tim Krul. It's an all Cayman front row. Then behind, Yannick Valenduk and Sems Benkelink take the second row, with Michael Hutman and Zander Vale in 5th and 6th. And it's Nicholas Malott in the 4 Cayman ahead of Luke Pound in 8th. Suke Vervat and Daniel Werkman round out your top 10. Then it's the 2 new drivers, Hop and Clark, who are in 11th and 12th places, with Daniel Herkstra, Patrick Tractor, Evan Nafas and Daniel Schenk. Thompson as well, who's a new driver, in 17th, and Anthony De Horst in 18th, ahead of Boyd, another new driver this evening, with Van der Linden rounding out your top 10. And a fantastically close grid indeed, just as we were speaking, as the drivers made their final attempts to better their lap times. The top 9 separated by just over a second, but from 10th place down to, wow, about over into the 20s, over into even 24th position, Steve, separated by another second. So that midfield is very close together indeed.
Yeah, and it's we've seen some very sensible, shall we say, mature professional racing from these guys so far this season in some very difficult conditions. So let's hope tonight. It appears that at the moment we have dry conditions. Let's hope that nobody does try to win this race on the first corner, and we get things underway relatively sensibly, and we get a good clean start, because that's what it's all about. Settle down into the race itself, rather than trying to do too much on the first lap, and just really get into a rhythm, as we know that a lot of drivers, they do need to get into a rhythm, and they want to settle down and see what can be done.
A 1 hour event then is laid out before us, but the drivers will need to complete a mandatory stop for tyres, I believe, at some point during the race. And we've seen that strategy play out over the 2 races we've had so far. Some drivers electing to dive to pit lane relatively early. From memory, it was Danny de Swart who pitted early on at Brands Hatch and had to fight his way through the field, but did so rather convincingly, and rather putting us to shame, Steve, because we didn't think he'd be able to do it. But he managed to get back to a podium position, which was very exciting indeed. But that pit stop and that strategy element, as we take a look at the grid, that's really important, isn't it? Because you have to weigh up how much you take out of the car early on, and whether you save the car and try and push that extra lap compared to your competition, and try and jump them in the stops.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the strategy with the 60-minute race, the pit stop. The tyre wear, I don't think, I might be wrong, and please correct me if I am, but the tyre wear hasn't really been too much of an issue for the GT4s. Round here it may be different, just depending on the track temps. I mean, we're looking at a track temp of 23 degrees at the moment, which, to be fair, isn't too bad. I don't think it's going to kill the tyres, but obviously, again, it's those curbs. We know the GT4s can be susceptible to punctures, although the curbs are smooth. Attack them too hard too often, and you could see some tyre pressure loss, and you could end up seeing yourself having to sort of think outside of your strategy and pit early, or in the worst case scenario, maybe having to pit a second time for tyres if you damage your car too much, as we're just all getting away now on the formation lap. So let's see. It's time to stop the talking and maybe start the racing.
Indeed. So as the drivers head around on their formation lap, and thank you, Steve, for that insight whilst riding down the middle of the grid on your Segway or favourite bicycle. That was a fantastic shot of the 2 rows of cars.
I think I nearly got run over at one point, but
very good indeed. But no, look at these drivers out there now, looking eager to get this race underway. As Steve alluded to there, 23 degrees track temperature isn't too extreme, but take the curbs once too often, and it's sometimes the straw that breaks the camel's back, and one too many adventures over the flat curbs here can indeed lead to punctures, which makes the race even more difficult. But thank you for those who are tuning in on the YouTube stream at the moment. Jarno de Vis are tuning in, saying good luck to Manuel Willems, who's down in 23rd position at the moment. Let's see if he can go forward in the 195 Cayman. And too bad Danny de Swart couldn't race tonight. Yes, indeed. It's a shame to see the championship leader not racing this evening, but fingers crossed he'll be back next time for the race at Spa on the 6th of April, which is in 2 weeks' time. But if you are watching and you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, and indeed at any point this evening you are enjoying this GT4 series, please go and like the stream and subscribe to the SRHI TV YouTube channel, and even hit that notification bell to remind you of the next time we go live. But as the grid rounds Aqua Minerale, heads up the hill towards the Variante Outer, it's a Cayman 1-2 with DeLorean Krull taking the top 2 spots. Then there's Valenduk, Sem Spenkelink, our Season 1 champion, with Mikael Putman here in the Camaro in 5th place. And Steve, it's all about the start, isn't it? But with an hour to go, certainly plenty of time still to make up those positions. We've seen how the strategy can play in. And we've seen that actually, even a half an hour race, there's plenty of time to make up positions.
Yeah, and absolutely. Just as you mentioned, the start of the race, I panned across to turn one to sort of turn two there, just to really emphasise really how interesting this is going to be as they run down into that start. And it's like we said, it's all going to be about who can keep it clean and who can keep it sensible and keep things in check. Just keep the ambition, shall we say, in check, as it's all about to get exciting as the lights are just about to go green.
2 rows of cars then round the final corner and head towards the start-finish line to get the third round of the second season of Sim Racing Hub International's GT4 Championship underway. Can Alexander Delors get the jump on Tim Krul as they head down to Tamburello? For all the drivers out there, you can't win it in turn 1, but you can certainly lose it. 60 minutes of racing lay ahead as they round this right-hand kink, and the green flag will be waved shortly as the drivers get ready to take the start. And it's green here at Imola, and it looks like Delors has done exactly what he needed to do. Sorry, that might be Krul actually. He's taken the start very well there. They came in side by side towards T1, and it looks like Yannick Valenduk is challenging Sem Spenkelink for that second position as they round the Tamburello through the left and the right. The stream of cars coming through, it looks like everyone's kept it relatively cleanly. No major drama erupting down the order, but into the Villeneuve chicane. Let's see how the guys get on here. It is indeed Krul who's filed into second place, and now is under challenge from Spenkelink, who looks to the outside, and Hutman to the inside. That was so nearly a collision there through the hairpin at Tosa. And now as they climb the hill towards the Piratella corner, it looks like everyone has started to form a single file line, and this is just allowing Delors to escape at the front end, with these guys battling behind as they come down the hill towards Aqua Minerale for the first time of asking. Delors leads by nearly a second from Krul. Then it's Spenkelink, Hutman and Yannick Valenduk in the BMWs drop back off the start, with Nicholas Malott and Luke Pound gaining a position from the start line, with Vale, Clark and Vervat rounding out your top 10. But it was nice to see the drivers get away cleanly, Steve, but plenty of racing still to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. No one tried to do anything silly on the first lap. Nobody sent it down the inside of anybody, and some good close racing, a good start from all the drivers. And now the battling does start. While they are all close together, they'll be looking to put moves. We're watching Spenkelink there just putting a wheel in the dirt with that KTM, and it's got a little bit crossed up, and that's given Hutman the run on him. But whether he can do anything in the slipstream now as they come round to complete the first lap, we will remain to be seen as they run towards the braking zone.
Let's see if that Camaro then really has the legs on the KTM. The KTM that goes surprisingly well at Monza, actually, doesn't it? So it does have some straight line speed in the pocket, but it looks like it's done just enough. Spenkelink holding on to third place for the moment, and his eyes will be set on closing that gap to Krul, which is now over a second and might be even larger as Spenkelink makes a mistake on the exit. Looked like Hutman followed him as well, because that's allowing Valenduk to make the move into the Villeneuve, Variante Villeneuve, and in behind, Malott and Pound look like they want to pounce on the battle erupting ahead. So it's something we've seen with GT4s, with the cars so close together. Find yourself offline or being passed, and the train seems to come steaming on through, and you can drop down multiple positions. Further back, we see Oliver Anderson going up the inside of Charlotte Robinson into Tosa. That's going to take 22nd position. The two Ginettas fighting as they run up the hill towards Piratella. But here is Malott. It looks like contact ahead. Hutman into the back of Valenduk through Aqua Minerale, and Hutman backs out of it and is going to lose 2 positions, I believe, as Malott goes through. And Pound ducks in behind and unable to make the best of the situation. But that looked like Hutman just ran in a bit too deep and made contact with the rear of Valenduk's BMW, and that could have caused both cars damage, which crucially, Steve, is going to be time at the pit stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking a little bit further back, we've got Patrick Tractor, who's coming under a lot of pressure as well from Evan Natapas, who made that last sort of ditch attempt and got up to P15 in qualifying, and he's certainly now transferring that qualifying pace into race pace and putting the pressure on Patrick, who, it has to be said, is I would consider one of the top 10 runners here.
So Tractor only gaining a position off the start, started 15th, he's now up to 14th. But we have seen how he can move forward through the order. He did at Suzuka, going from 23rd into the top 10. So let's see how the 313 Ginetta's race pans out as we cut back to Hutman here, who now is under pressure from Pound, and Pound really missed the opportunity to gain that position after the Camaro had the coming together with the BMW through Aqua Minerale. And that's just really allowing the guys to still be under fire. Arjen Lermans here in the 46 Camaro being pressured rather severely by Denise Pope in the 79 Wild Things Ginetta. Actually, it looks like Lermans got through. They were separated by just under 600ths of a second at the line, so probably the Camaro just able to drag past the Ginetta. Such is the power and speed of this Chevy Camaro compared to the little feisty Ginetta. But as they round Aqua Minerale now, Michael Hutman looking to recover from that coming together with Valenduk, and he might be carrying front end damage, which is the last thing you want at a circuit like Imola that's so tricky and technical. As we see Patrick Tractor coming under fire from the Tapas behind as they run side by side into Variante Outer, and the Tapas with the inside line gets the move done. So these two exchanging positions a couple of times already this lap as they run down the hill towards Ravazza to end what is the third lap. Delort really under fire now from Krull, who's able to close down that gap 2/10 at the last split, and as they cross the line this time, it's probably going to be even less with the 933 in the slipstream of the 49 running up towards Tamburello. Krull looks to the outside. Can he get the move done? That would set him up for the inside of the second part, but no. And behind, Valenduk trying to do the same thing to Sem Spenkelink, but can't get the job done. Opts to file in behind. And Steve, that's a brave move to be making round the outside of Tamburello. As we see Spenkelink goes very defensive, chopping across the nose of the BMW on the run down to Villeneuve. Spenkelink holds on to the position, but trying to go around the outside at Tamburello, you've got to have someone looking out for you to get that move done.
Yeah, absolutely, and all this is doing now is letting Malott catch up, and even Hutman's not out of the battle. He's closing in as he gets a little bit sideways through there, and Pound as well. So this is top seven battling away really in two small groups. But yeah, you know, Sem just he needs to sort of concentrate, keep his head down, and do what we know he can do, which is be consistent. We've used that term many times to describe Sem's driving style, and he is consistent. He needs to get into that rhythm. As he makes another mistake there, it just, you know, as he went through Aqua Minerale, and that's going to cost him 2 positions, and indeed it has, and possibly a third, as Hutman's closing up on the back of him as well now. So he just needs to, you know, calm it down, try and get into that rhythm, get into the groove, and just put the consistent laps in. Very exciting stuff to watch though, and this is fantastic racing, and this is what we've come to expect from the SRHI GT4 Championship. Absolutely amazing stuff.
Very close racing indeed. In fact, Malott was the fastest driver on that previous lap, but Spenkelink sends one up the inside in an attempt to get the position back into the Ravazza, and he can't get the job done, runs through the gravel on the exit, and that might leave him exposed to a challenge from Hutman as they run across the start-finish line down towards turn 1 at Tamburello. But once again, in the top left of your screen, Tim Krull is looking for a way past Delort. He goes right and then left, nearly contact with the back of the Cayman as they go into Tamburello, and Delort's gone deep and right across the sand trap. Let's see if Delort can return to the track safely. He does, but he's conceded that position to Krull, who looked like he was going to get the move done at some point anyway. But that certainly made it a lot easier with Delort running on. But Spenkelink now trying to get past Malott again into Villeneuve, round the outside through the right-hander. A little bit of contact's going to push Spenkelink out, allows Hutman to the outside into Tozer. Spenkelink able to hold the position just about, Steve, but Delort, that mistake at turn 1, very much costly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Delors just lost the lead there, and I think, to be fair, I think Kroll's got the legs on him. I think he's got the pace, and he may just try and build a bit of a gap now, which he is doing. I think he's round about he's showing 1.5 seconds up the road, so that's a very good gap at this early stage in the race. But Spenkelink, what's he doing, Tim? I mean, he is the consistent driver, and it just seems to be that he's retaliating, and he's trying to get the move done, and it appears he's trying to get that move done in what is, in my opinion, in the wrong corners. He's putting himself at risk. You know, when you're another mistake, but when you're the driver that's in the meat in the sandwich, as it were, when you're attacking, you need to be decisive. You need to know that when you're attacking, you're going to get the job done, because if you don't, you compromise yourself, and that seems to be what Sem's doing tonight. He seems to be attacking, but every time he's attacking, he's putting himself under more pressure from the guys behind. And there's two of them. They're both biting at his heels and both wanting to get that position off him.
Fortunately for Sem there, Luke Pound was trying to force his way past Hutman, the 166 Aston Martin, making a move on the Camaro. They're side by side across the line, and that's given Spenkelink maybe that breathing space he needed to get his head down and concentrate. It certainly had the air of Sebastian Vettel in his Red Bull days. You know, people used to say starting out front he had it easy, but put him back in the back and he struggles to find a way through. But we know Sem's a good racer, so let's see now if he can get his head down and close the gap to Malott in front. But that's 10 minutes flashed by in the blink of an eye into this one. Tim Krul rather handed the lead by Delors, who made the mistake at Tamburello on the previous lap. He leads by over a second, well, nearly 2 seconds, just through a half a lap or so of leading this one, with Yannick Valenduk rounding out the podium. Then it's Malott, Spenkelink, and the Aston Martin on screen at the moment of Luke Pound, with Michael Hutman in 7th ahead of Xander Bale, Dennis Berkman and Clark rounding out the top 10. He's moved forward from the start on his first appearance in this season, with Anthony de Horst in 11th. So we're seeing some drivers starting to make some moves, but Spenkelink is the driver that's really drawing the action at the moment because of moving backwards down the order and finding himself in amongst the drama. Luke Pound getting a bit out of shape on the exit of the Variante Outer, and that's really going to cost him time to Hutman, and more importantly, the pace down the hill towards Ravazza, which is one of the overtaking opportunities around the lap here at Imola. But Pound able to hold the position, running wide on the exit there is going to cost him some time. And as we look further up the order, we can see Spenkelink really has closed up the gap to Malott. It's now just over a second, and when they cross the line, I'm sure it's come down by a sizable chunk, yet down to below half a second now. So given that space to start making his own decisions and not be caught up in battling, Sem really does have the pace, but he has got to carry that momentum, Steve, to make the move on the car in front now and kick up towards the podium.
Yeah, we're looking at Thompson now as well, trying to make a move, and we're just going to look at the straight line speed disadvantage of the Ginetta, I'm sad to say, although doing a very good job of trying to hold it, forcing him into the braking zone. But yeah, Thompson's got that job done quite convincingly, quite easily. But we're just seeing there that Pound's just made a mistake. Sorry, I missed that. He just went off onto the grass and just cost himself some time. And we're looking at Spenkelink there as well, actually looking like he's going to move forward at the moment.
Trying to go around the outside at Malott at Piratella. Certainly be a brave one if you can get that done as they run down the hill towards Aqua Minerale. Spenkelink now looking like the driver best placed to gain another position. He has got the pace over the car in front, being Nicholas Malott. In fact, on that previous lap time by Spenkelink was nearly a second or over a second faster, setting a personal best of a 51.6, but he's gone deep into the Variante Outer, and that's going to allow Hutman to close right up, and that Camaro is going to be in his mirrors on the run down the hill towards the 2 final corners at Ravazza. But it's those kind of mistakes that are really costing Spenkelink the time. He does look like he's got the pace in that KTM crossbow, but these little errors here and there are costing him valuable seconds that are allowing not only Tim Krul to escape right up the order. You know, you've got to think Sem's got his eye on race victory, but it's stopping him from making these crucial passes in the first quarter of this race. Those small mistakes might not look like much, but they certainly add up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe Sem's just missing a bit of rain. I think he wants it to rain because that's where he's shone so far this season. But I have no doubt. You know, we've got 46 minutes left. Sem is a driver, as I said earlier. He will. You know, he's tenacious. He won't give up. So he'll be there, and he'll be there at the end. And you know, I fully expect him to be at least in the top 10, if not in the top 5 at the end. And he has got the pace. He just needs to settle down. But credit to the guys around him at the moment, they're not giving him time to settle down. But one man who is on a charge, and that is Valenduk in 3rd place. We've sort of taken our eyes off him a little bit, and he's closed up to 2nd place. He's under a second behind, so he's sort of doing what he needs to do, and he's trying to close that gap down in his BMW down to Delors in the Porsche ahead of him, and he is taking a little bit of time out of him lap after lap. But you're quite right in what you said, Tim, with Krull. He's just keeping his head down. He's trying to maintain a gap. He's not really extending the gap at the moment, but it's not getting any closer either.
Well, Valenduk was in fact the fastest driver on the track in the previous lap, so let's see if he can keep the pace and push on towards the back of Delors in the 49 Cayman. It really does look like he's closed up. I wonder if the BMW has an advantage in a straight line, or indeed round other parts of this track. We know how quick he was at Suzuka in a straight line, but he just couldn't get the move done on Malott, I believe, was the Cayman in front. He kept making mistakes on the exit of corners and unable to get the power down, was struggling to then use that straight line speed advantage of the M4 GT4 to make the move on the driver in front. So let's see if he's learnt from his errors last time out at Suzuka, and see if he can get past Delors, which will certainly be a challenge to say the least. As a picture in picture, we see Malott running wide through the second part of Tamburello, and that's going to hand the position to Sem Spenkelink, who's really been chomping at the heels of the Porsche Cayman, but he's got through now up to 4th place, which is where he started. But a huge slide through Villeneuve, rallycross style almost. Don't know how he held that one. He must have been looking out the side window there, Steve.
Absolutely, the crossbow was crossed up. It was full on sideways, full slide, power slide. That was that was Clarkson test track style, wasn't it? It was fantastic driving there from Spenkelink to hold it. But he just needs to, calm it down. Just be consistent. Those guys behind now, Malott and Huttman, are going to start battling. So he doesn't need to really maybe push as hard. Just try and focus on putting those consistent lap times in, because those guys behind are going to slow each other up now, as we're already seeing them going side by side behind him. So it's advantage Sem at the minute to try and catch Valenduk and Delors ahead of him, and potentially Krull. But as we're just seeing the guys behind now, almost tripping over each other.
It looked like Huttman made a dive up the inside of the Cayman of Malott, and indeed has got that position. This is enabling Spenkelink that license to just get his head down and kick on. Huttman running wide through Ravazza. He's going to have to be careful rejoining side by side with the Cayman of Malott there, but manages to, well, somehow he gets let back in the train of cars that are forming, which is 5th down to, wow, it looks like 10th or maybe even 11th here for the party. Look how close that is. Anthony de Horst in the Mercedes at the back of the train, but any mistake here could see you lose multiple positions. They run down to Tamburello. Looks to have got things sorted. Malott coming under fire. Sorry, that's Luke Pound coming under fire from Xander Vale, who goes all over the curb through the second part and runs wide. And I think he's going to have dropped a couple of positions as they round the first complex at Tamburello. This aerial shot showing just how the cars close up and then extend away from each other through the corners as well. Malott getting all kinds... Sorry, that's Verkman getting all kinds of sideways on the exit of Villeneuve. I hope he's not copying Sem Spenkelink, because do that too many times, and once it's going to bite and you'll find yourself in the gravel. But Yannick Valenduk, he set the purple lap time a couple of laps ago. He's then gone fastest in the first sector the previous time around. He's very much got the pace in that 301 BMW, but catching is one thing, passing is another, and if he gets past Delors, he'll certainly be looking in a very healthy position.
Yeah, absolutely. The BMW, I think it's a fairly strong, looking like it's going to be a fairly strong car around Imola this evening, certainly in the hands of Valenduk. Because let's be honest, in the GT4 class, those Porsches are a fantastic all-round car, as we've seen on many occasions. So they are going to be a difficult car to beat. And I think, as you've coined the phrase this evening, it's one thing to catch, but it's another to pass. So we'll see how Valenduk deals with the number 49 Porsche of Delors, as he's as close as he's ever been now as they come round to complete this lap and move into the next. And he's certainly gained an advantage from the slipstream, as Delors is almost looking to go defensive, and they cross paths, and that gives the BMW the inside line contact there, as Valenduk just really got caught too much of the curb, and it just unsettled the car. Complete racing incident in my opinion was that, but it's allowed Delors to get back through, and Valenduk has that second place taken away from him as quickly as he gained it.
So close to getting the move done. It did look like he sent that one in on a wing and a prayer to get the position. It was very late on the brakes. Just clipped one of those yellow curbs that are over the main Italian flag coloured flatter curb linings with the rumble strips, really. Those yellow curbs just seemed to catch out the BMW and lifted up the front end, which gave him no chance of turning into the first apex, and a little bit of contact with the Porsche. But hopefully they can continue on cleanly. But it did look like Valenduk a chance to make that move. So he's had the opportunity already, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him wind up and go for it again. Meanwhile, this train of cars, which is Malott, Hutman, Werkman and Luke Pound, in their battling, has really given Spenkling that opportunity to gap them. He's now best part of 4 seconds off the back of Valenduk. Sorry, my timing screens are confusing me a little bit. The Spenkling actually just up the road, so he hasn't escaped too much. I wonder if he's made a mistake, because the timing screen is showing him nearly 4 seconds ahead of Malott on the last time through past the line. So those mistakes still costing Spenkling some time. But this quartet fighting for what is 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th positions inside the top 10, and looking like it's going to take something to break them apart, as we see. Werkman looks to the outside of Hutman on the run down towards Tamburello. I wonder whether the Cayman's going to have the legs in a straight line, or whether the Camaro can fight back. But it looks like Werkman's got through. I wonder whether Hutman just saw him alongside and thought, okay, I'll tuck in behind and follow, because with 39 minutes still to spare, there's plenty of racing to be had. And I wonder if Hutman's just deciding that discretion is the better part of valour. As we see in the background, that's Anthony to Horst running wide on the final part of the Tamburello sequence. He's in 11th at the moment, and it looks like he is now coming under fire from Patrick Tractor in the 313 Ginetta. This battling is very close though, but one slight mistake can see you slip down the order indeed. And Hutman here, running up the hill, is now fighting back on Werkman into Piratella. He's got the job done, so he's actually regained that position around the course of the first sector and a half. And Spenkling now, he looks like he's getting his act together. I wouldn't be surprised to see him really kick on up towards the top 3, but such is the pace of the current podium sitters that in their battling as well, Delors and Valenduk are still quicker than Seb.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's these guys. I think what happened with Malott and Werkman there. I think there was the case of the double slipstream, wasn't there? The Porsche pulled out from the behind Hutman, and I think he got a little bit of a tow from Malott as well to help him past. I don't think Hutman wanted him past, because obviously he was attacking again very, very quickly. But Valenduk, talking of attacking, is back into that slipstream. Not quite as close as he was on the previous lap when he made the attack, but certainly close enough to be worrying Delors again. But how much confidence will that have given Delors, in the respect that yes, Valenduk's caught him, and then he's had one attack and he's managed to defend it very, very successfully by retaking the position straight away.
Yeah, he'll know that he's able to make the pass, but he's just got to complete the job. It's one thing sending it in deep on the brakes, but you've got to get the car stopped and turned in. So Delors going to know that Valenduk's really trying to get through and really having to pull something out of the bag to get the move done, as we've seen our first pit callers of this evening. Luke Pound opting to get out of that battle for 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th or so, and heads to pit lane with 37 minutes to spare. So we'll keep an eye on him and see if he can make benefit of that earlier pit stop than his rivals and leapfrog them. Sometimes I think that's the best strategy. Look, get yourself out of the battle and get yourself out of that situation that's costing you time, crucial time across the course of the 60-minute race, and make that pit stop whilst those out on track are going hammer and tongs. And that's going to elevate Lee Mosley up to 11th place. I believe a couple of other cars have headed to pit lane to make their mandatory stop. So let's see how this one starts to phase out. But the pit window is certainly open now. And let's see if Malott, Hutman, Berkman, or indeed Clark, who's closed up to the back of this pack, decide to match Pound and cover him off by heading into pit lane, as Hutman runs wide on the exit of Ravatsa again. He manages to just cut across the nose of Berkman. See if anyone dives to pit lane. No, they elect to stay out for another lap. This aerial shot, let's see if we can watch Berkman close up in the slipstream. There is an effect. It is working. That Camaro is punching a very sizable hole in the air, and it's allowing the Cayman to get round the outside into Tamburello. Workman looks like he's got it done on the brakes, but can't get the car slowed down. He runs through the gravel on the right-hand side, and as he rejoins the track, just about manages to file into line. Clark's going to attempt to make the move into Villeneuve, but no, elects to fall in behind the fellow Cayman. He's certainly pushing his workmen to get that move done on Hutman. These guys have exchanged positions a couple of times, Steve, but really yet to see a decisive move that holds on to that position. As we see, Valenduk, meanwhile, has got past Delort.
Yeah, absolutely. We missed that in the picture-in-picture. Just everything going on all at once around this track, and the guy's battling really hard. And it has to be said that quite a lot of little, just very small, niggly little mistakes, causing a few issues for a few drivers this evening. And I'm just wondering if the competition is so tight tonight that it's just a little bit of pressure applied is just enough to force the issue with some drivers. Although having said that, Spenklik seems to have settled down now, although he is 10 seconds back from this battle, although he's closing because a couple of laps ago he was just over 11 seconds back, so that gap is coming down, albeit very slow, and it's a sizable gap still at the minute. Malott has dropped back to sort of 2.5 seconds behind Spenklik now, so Spenklik, he's the guy, really. He wants to be staying out, he wants to hot lap. Some of the other guys, like you said, that are in the battle that are maybe being held up by the guy in front, they need to consider that pit stop, the early stop, but let's not forget, if they stop too early, then they run the risk of coming back out in traffic further down the field. And there aren't any weak drivers in this championship. You come out down the field and everyone's going to battle you just as hard for position, so you could end up getting out of one situation and putting yourself right back into another one.
So let's see then, as you were talking there, Steve, Hutman head to pit lane to make his mandatory stop. As you can see on the timing board on the left-hand side, he's dropping down the order. Luke Pound emerged from his stop a lap previous, down in 25th place. So let's see if Pound's strategy has worked, because if he jumps Hutman now, we could see him jump those other drivers that he was battling with previous to the stop window opening. So that strategy could have played out rather nicely for Pound. We'll keep an eye on that as a number of other drivers head to pit lane, including Boyd, Kaijen and Willems heads to the stop, as we see Delort running wide on the exit of Aqua Minerale, costing him valuable time. As we saw, just dipping out of shot, Tim Krul is catching traffic, so I wonder whether the 933 Cayman will opt to head to pit lane this time to stay clear of having to make a pass on another car, a slower car. You see actually Anthony Tehorst on the left-hand side of your screen has picked up a stop-go penalty that potentially is for speeding in pit lane, most likely, as it looks like he has made his stop already. As Luke Pound here gaining positions, and as you can see in the picture in Pitchman, Hutman has indeed kept that position and not lost the position in the pit lane. So it looks like that early stop is yet to play out for Pound's benefit. That's really interesting there, Steve, to see how already, look, you can see the gap found just in the back of shot there. If anything, that early stop has cost him time.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's as we're saying. I'm not saying I was correct, but that potentially is the issue, that he's had to battle some other cars on track, and it's just potentially slowed his lap times down, and it's cost him, rather than staying out and running with the slightly faster guys maybe at the front and matching their pace, keeping the pressure applied. It's got to be said, it's worth the gamble though, isn't it? It's you don't know unless you try, and if you sit behind someone and pit at the same time, chances are, unless they make a mistake in the pits, you're just going to come back out and you're going to be running line astern once you leave the pits. So definitely worth a gamble, but on this occasion unfortunately just hasn't paid off.
So we see that second place runner Yannick Valenduk has headed to pit lane. He's the first of the podium runners to take their mandatory stop. He did so with 32 minutes to spare. Here on track at the moment, Lewis Clark has jumped up to 6th place, obviously inheriting positions as those pit around him, but a very strong showing indeed. He's now 6/10 really off the back of Werkman in front of him. Suke Vervat looking very strong in 10th place, with Natafas in front and Mosley behind. Vervat having a difficult time actually at Suzuka. Qualified 19th, finished 21st. Probably isn't an accurate representation of what he can do, because as we're seeing this evening, he's well up the order indeed, inside the top 10 as it stands on the road, but likely to drop back as he takes his pit stop. As we see, Delors head to pit lane now as well. So let's see.
Malottin as well. Malottin
as well. So they're all heading to pit lane on this lap. Let's see now, crucially, whether Delors has done enough on that one extra lap compared to Valenduk to jump him and take the position. Tim Krul electing to stay out now as we head over the halfway mark. Tim Krul leads Sem Spenkelink, who's second on the road, but yet to stop. Daniel Werkman, Clark, Vale, Tractor, your top 6. All of those drivers yet to hit pit lane, with Vervat now up into 7th in the stops. But Delors, Malott, Tafas, Mosley and Thompson in pit lane. And it's all about to play out in front of us. Krul surely needs to come to the pit lane at some point in the next 5 minutes, I would say. Otherwise, he's going to lose the benefit of new tyres to those drivers around him who if they can get out onto clean track and use the new rubber underneath them, could improve on their lap times and indeed jump him at the stops. But he held a pretty healthy margin to Valenduk and Delors before the stops played out. As we see, Daniel Hoekstra here in the 66 Aston Martin stopped in pit lane. And Yannick Valenduk returning to track. He pitted a lap earlier. He's 14th now, and that is Delors in the picture-in-picture. So yeah, if anything, Valenduk has extended that gap.
Yeah, absolutely, big advantage there. I mean, Valenduk had the pace anyway, I think, so he's managed to get some clean air and put some hot laps in, and he's in a good position now to potentially maybe take some time out of the leader when all the pit stops all shake out and everything's done. We could have a grandstand fight for the finale of this race.
Well, let's see then. With 28 minutes to spare, Krul is into the pit lane. Here is your race leader as he comes down the very long pit lane at Imola to make his one and only stop of the event this evening. Let's see where he returns to the track. Yannick Valenduk here, 12th on the road, but really net second place after coming down pit lane, rounding Aqua Minerale. As you see, this is fantastic work to see the picture in picture. You can see Krul is stationary whilst the 301 BMW is absolutely flying. And if Valenduk's going to make the position, it's probably going to be now, because he is absolutely flying out there on track at the moment, looking like he's got the pace. But Krul is rolling down pit lane, and he hasn't got very far to go. You'd put your money on Krul retaining his lead, but at a slightly reduced margin. Valenduk rounds the final corner at Ravazza. He's going to be pushing hard to get all the way up towards Tamburello before the Cayman, and it looks unlikely as Krul releases the pit limiter and heads down towards the first corner. The gap reduced but I don't think there's going to be a change there as Kroll emerges in 6th place ahead of Lottermans and Lermans, and then Yannick Valenduk in 9th. But plenty of time still to go, Steve, but it looks like that slightly later stop has seen Kroll extend his gap.
Yeah, absolutely. It just goes to show, doesn't it, how obviously depending on the way you're going to come out on track and what traffic you've got, it's whatever suits you at the time, whether it's good to pit early, pit later. On this occasion, I think Valenduk has potentially made some time up, albeit possibly not as much as he would have liked to, but Tim Kroll still very much in the driving seat for the race win this evening with 26 minutes left on the clock. Again, we use the phrase so many times, but it is his race to lose at the moment. But I think Valenduk has got some really good pace in that BMW, and I think the margin will be closer as we come towards the end of this race. I'm not sure if he's got the pace to catch him, but we have seen mistakes. They're going to have a lot more traffic to battle as the race goes on now. The pit stops are really sort of throwing things around and get cars all over the track at the moment, so they're going to come across a lot of back markers, and hopefully they won't trip over anybody. But literally there's around about probably just under 9 seconds between them at the moment, as we see Delors picking up a drive-through only halfway through the race, just over, and he's got a drive-through already, so that just goes to show how hard Delors been pushing in this race.
And the drive-throughs here at Imola are painful to say the least. It's such a long pit lane that you have to trundle down compared to the flat-out stretch as drivers cross the start-finish line. But crucially, in terms of that battle we saw for the positions inside the top 10, we had Sem Spenkelink, Dennis Berkman and Clark head to pit lane with 26 minutes to spare. So we're going to see those guys re-emerge on track. Those were obviously, half of the battle pack that included Malott and Hutman. So let's see if there's been any position changes there. Arjen Lermans on screen at the moment, all over the back of Van der Linden in the 61 Aston Martin. Closing on the bright yellow and blue Ginetta, number 87 of Charlotte Robertson, who's yet to head to pit lane. She's one of our last drivers still to make their mandatory visit to the pit lane. It looks like she might be serving that stop now. Indeed, she pulls over to the right-hand side. It
almost looked like she got hustled into the pit lane there, Tim. It's time for your stop, off you go.
No other option with a scary-looking Camaro closing in, indeed, as Lermans looks to the inside of Van der Linden but opts to stay in behind. And indeed, it does look like there has been some changes further up the order. In fact, Hutman has dropped behind Clark at the stop. So that came a number 22 of Clark definitely looked to be strong in the end of his first stint. So he's made up some valuable time and has jumped the 84 Camaro, as we see Suke Vervat and Arvidsson head to pit lane for their stops. And yeah, it does look like the white, black and purple Cayman has jumped the blue and red Camaro in the stops playing out. We saw Hutman head to pit lane with 33 minutes to go. Clark opting to pit about 10 minutes later, so that's your advantage. He has gained a handful of seconds to jump the Camaro, and Spenkelink crucially returning to track ahead of all of them. So for his race this evening, he hasn't made any mistake in terms of strategy that's going to drop him back into this pack that he was so ferociously fighting with in the opening 15 minutes. So it's going to be head down for him, an 8-second gap to Valenduk. He's now in position to take that third place on the podium, with Delors serving his drive through as soon as he was handed it. The 49 Cayman now all the way down in 14th position on the road, with a couple of drivers to serve their stop. So let's see if Delors' position changes with 22.5 minutes to go. But indeed, Luke Pound actually looks like he's lost out to Patrick Tractor as well. So the Ginetta, so readily seems to be flying up the order, is doing much the same this evening after starting 15th on the grid. He's now up inside the top 10, 7th in fact. So having another stellar round at Imola. I wonder if Patrick could get qualifying right, Steve. He'd be right up there, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he would. And I was just taking a few moments there to watch the times tick over as the guys cross the line at the top three. And Kroll, that time to Valenduk, he's losing ground. Valenduk, if you remember, it was round about 9 seconds earlier. It's now down to 8.1. But also Spenkelink, he was up into double figures before the pit stops, round about 11 seconds back. He's now only 8 seconds back. So with 21.5 minutes just over left to go of this race, there are 2 8-second gaps that are coming down. So this could get very, very interesting very, very soon, and maybe with the last sort of 5-10 minutes of the race, we could end up with 3 cars close together. Because for me, if Spenkelink's catching Valenduk and Valenduk's catching Kroll, this is what we want. This is why you pay the money to sit in the grandstand.
Exactly, you're going to be valuing your ticket even more so if the top trio really close up towards the finish. And indeed, Seb Spenkelink taking another chunk out of Valenduk on that previous lap. Let's see as they cross the line, across the next sector split, whether those times change. Valenduk's still 8.6 seconds back from Kroll, and we wait to see Spenkelink cross the sector split, 8.1 seconds. So those gaps are reducing and then going back out again as they ebb and flow around certain parts of the track. But Kroll will be aware that the drivers behind are within touching distance. You know, he will know that 8.6 second margin can change very rapidly should he make a mistake around this Imola circuit. And that's so tricky, isn't it, Steve? It's one of the difficult things. You've got the margin, you've got the gap, you know it's your race to lose. It's all about getting your head down and ticking off those laps.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's about the consistency, and we use that word so often. You know, it's just about keeping everything consistent, clean, staying within the track limits. Don't make those mistakes. Just because even though the cars aren't visually, you know, close, they can't see each other, they're still going to be there putting the pressure on each other, because believe me, they're going to be looking at those relative times. And you know, it's all about keeping the pressure on your opponent, and that's all they can do at the moment. You know, as they are there just watching the guys going round, they'll be looking at that time, they'll be looking at their lap times, and they'll be able to see those gaps coming down. You know, Valenduk will be very, very aware that Spenkelink is now less than 7 seconds behind him. Kroll, it seems, has just put a bit of got his foot down a little bit. He's now extended that gap, albeit by a couple of tenths, but it is, you know, when it ticks over another second, so it's back to over 9 seconds away, it very, very much, it will spur Kroll on. He'll think now that, you know, he'll feel in control of this race, and it is Valenduk that seems to be very much under pressure from Spenkelink at the moment, although that gap is just seesawing around the 8-second mark. So it's as I was getting all excited about them all potentially closing up, it seems to be settling down ever so slightly, which is, to be fair, it's not what we want to see. We want to see Spenkelink catch Valenduk, Valenduk catch Kroll, and we want a three-way battle for the fight on the last lap of this race, going into the last corner, 3 wide. That's what I want.
Well, Steve's put in his order, so let's see if they can provide. But as we head into the final third of this one, Kroll leads Valenduk, Spenkelink 8 seconds off the man in second place, with Dennis Berkman a further 10 seconds back. Then he's got Clark Hutman for close company in 5th and 6th, with Patrick Tractor 8 seconds further back in 7th. And it's Luke Pound in 8th ahead of Xander Vale, and Evan Natafas in 10th, who's our AM class leader at the moment in the 75 Aston Martin. Then it's Delore in the 49 Cayman, who looks set for a podium but got handed a drive through, which we can only suspect is for abuse of track limits, in 11th, as Hutman looks to the outside of Clark on the run-in to Variante Outer, and they both get a bit crossed up on the way in, and Clark has to dive across the grass there. That could count towards his track limit abuse counts. 3 strikes, and on the 4th one, you're out. So let's see if Clark now has to drive a bit more conservatively round the final 17 3/4 minutes to really get the job done safely. He has benefited through the pit stops, now up into 5th place. But Kroll, that gap between Kroll and Valenduk really is starting to change. It's just seen it's gone over 9.5 seconds. I wonder if it's going to be up towards 10 as they cross the line on that previous lap. But here's Bas Vandenberg, in the 16 Cayman. He's all over the back of Arvidsson in the 39 Ginetta on the run up towards Variante Outer as they go through the right and the left. Well, Arvidsson really keeping the Ginetta off the curbs. Oh, Vandenberg had to hold on to that one, didn't he? Getting all kinds of squirrely on the exit. And they're trying to close up towards Daniel Herkstra, who's the purple car just gone out of shot. The 66 Aston Martin. They do have Charlotte Robertson in between them, so lap traffic involved in this one as it stands. But let's see how this one plays out, because they are battling to be what is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh in the AM class. Just counting, I did use my fingers as well there, Steve, just to make sure.
I was just going to ask if you wanted to borrow some, but
yeah, could do with an abacus as well, just to help me out. But yes, these guys battling inside the top 10 in class, despite the fact they're towards 20th position overall. So important points for their individual championship challenges. And looks like the gap at the front, Steve, has rather stabilised between Kroll and Valenduk. In fact, the gap now 9.5 seconds, and Spenkelink still not able to close in on the BMW in second. The gap still around 8 or so seconds, and on that previous lap time he wasn't able to do anything about the gap to the BMW.
No, absolutely not, and it's just interesting to see, you know, I mean, they're all lapping pretty much, like you say, very, very similar. Kroll is the fastest man, I believe, looking at the last lap times. He was in the 50.8, with Ballenduck with the 51.3 and Spenkelink with the 51 dead. So Spenklink's still a little bit faster than Ballenduck, but importantly for Kroll, he was the fastest man out there, as we're now seeing Patrick Tractor coming under pressure from the outside, with Luke Pound trying to go around the outside, but that Ginetta just keeps a defensive tight line, manages to ride the curbs. It's just compromised his exit, but he's got the inside again, and Pound's going to have to cut back and try and go. This is going to be scary now. This is going to be a very brave move as they go into Villeneuve side by side, but it looks like Luke Pound, if he can keep this under control, has got the job done.
Fantastic move from the driver of the 166 Aston Martin. He really used the advantage of that advantage of the vantage. There we go.
Oh,
got my,
dear.
Tongue twist up on that one. But yes, he had that straight line speed over the Ginetta, which does seem to struggle in a straight line, and Tractor able to hold on to the car as he rode over the curbs on the first apex of Tamburello, and that Ginetta can really get pushed offline and hit heavily by the curbs around this track in particular. But as it looks like Pound's able now just to set about gapping him slightly. It looked like Tractor was a little bit crossed up through Aqua Minerale, and indeed that's enabled him to open up a 6/10 gap to the Ginetta. So as we cut back to Frank Hopp here in the 7 Cayman, all over the back of Natalie Lee in the 19 Mercedes on the run up towards Variante Outer, as they go through nice and cleanly this battle for 27th and 28th position on the road. Both drivers have made their stop, so this is a fight on track for position, and I wonder how these cars match up in a straight line. We can see how they close up through the Ravazza, through the left. Looked like Lee really got a great exit. She moves over to the left hand side to try and break the toe. Hop opting to follow in, of course. They're running all over those marbles on the inside. Lee weaving from right to left as well, still trying to break the toe. Just shows you how strong the slipstream is here, Steve, all this way down in towards Tamburello. Just see the gap that Hop's closed up. It looks like he could get the move done if he just got the exit of Ravazza right, which he was unable to do last time.
Yeah, just looking a little bit untidy, a little bit scruffy, and too much curb to unsettle the car, and that's the difference, between somebody who can just keep it all tidy, keep it smooth. Again, he just went a little bit deep there, and it's causing him to either lift off the throttle or have to wait just that little bit longer, as he's just being lapped at the minute, so allowing the car through, which will cost him time, but hopefully he'll make it all back up again as Natalie will have to also let that car through. And just unfortunately seeing Denise Pope up the road currently in 25th in the 79 Ginetta, suffering a drive-through penalty as well. So Denise not having a great race as she opts to jump into the pits more or less straight away to take that penalty. Just going to cut back now to Patrick Tractor, who's not given up on Luke Pound. He's still trying to stay within the slipstream of the Aston Martin, and he's going to have to be very, very tight in the slipstream to stay with him down the straight, isn't he, Tim?
Yeah, he's going to have to prioritise getting an exit, a really strong exit out of these final two corners at Ravazza to keep up with that Aston Martin. Indeed, it looks like he's very nice through there, the final left-hander. He looks close enough to be getting a toe, but I don't think he'll be close enough to challenge or indeed close that gap too much, such as the deficit that Ginetta has in a straight line. As you can see, Pound just rather stretching his legs and getting away in the white, purple and blue vantage. As here we have...
Is this the leader trying to put laps on two guys that are battling, I believe?
This looks like it. So yeah, indeed, this is Krull, who's got Manuel Williams in front and Rick Lotterman in the BMW. So look, they're locked in
flashing
battle.
His light.
Krull's trying to get through. Yeah, he's flashing the lights to let them know, but that's going to have cost him time on that lap for sure. And look, those drivers have every right to battle. They're fighting for their position, but sometimes just got to have an eye out for the leaders, as it looks like Williams really has got the advantage on the run down the hill towards Ravazza. Lotterman able to close the door. But these guys, they've got every right to fight for that, and it's just up to Krull really to make himself known on the circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to be fair to the guys there, I think they let him through at a fair opportunity, and while it may have cost him some time, I think it'll have been marginal. His last lap, it actually was a 51.3 more or less for round figures, so it's somewhere near where he's been doing anyway. So not too terrible for him. I don't think he'll be too disappointed or frustrated with that one, as Williams really sort of tried to use that to his advantage, though, didn't he? There, and he just missed out on being close enough to attack Letterman a little bit harder into the final braking zone of Vatsa. He's pushing hard, and it just goes to show these guys, they're fighting for sort of 23rd place, and they're fighting very, very hard. As we see the Porsche is closing up on the BMW in the braking zones an awful lot, but the BMW just seems to be able to stretch its legs as it leaves the corners, and it just manages to gap the Porsche just enough to hold position and take away the danger into the next corner.
Well, as you said, Steve, Krull didn't lose too much time. In fact, he actually exceeded his margin by 4/10 on that lap, because Valenduk set a 51.6. But even more noticeably, Sem Spenkelink in the 74 KTM Crossbow did a lap time of 52.5. So he lost over a second to the race leader. So that challenge that we thought might come from the KTM really hasn't emerged in this second half of the race. I wonder if he made a mistake. It looked like he lost quite a sizable chunk of time in the second sector, where you think the KTM would be strong as they run through Villeneuve, Tosa, Piratella and down towards Aqua Minerale. But it's interesting to see that Sem really hasn't been able to extract the pace this evening that we thought he had in this KTM. Whether that's, like you say, due to the conditions and it not being rainy enough, he's certainly going to be preparing his rain dance for the next round at Spa, if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, let's not forget, this isn't, as you say, we've got Spa coming up. This isn't a one-off race. This is a championship. So a podium here tonight for Sem, it's just another good result for him. And while he'll obviously always battle for the next place further forward, I think at the end of the race he'll take that. He'll be happy with it. It's some good, solid points to add to the solid points he's already got. But we're looking at Vale now in the 718 Porsche. He's looking to put Patrick Tractor in the 313 Ginetta under pressure very, very soon. That gap has steadily been coming down, and I would say that Tractor is going to struggle to hang on to that 8th place, I believe. I think even with mistakes to one side, I think the Porsche Vale is going to have him under pressure within the next lap or two. Probably at the end of this lap, I think he'll be close enough to start thinking about making a move.
Well, Luke Pound has certainly started to escape from these two after he got past the Ginetta tractor. He's now best part of 2 seconds further up the road. So Patrick Tractor going backwards a little bit at the moment, but Vale showing some competitive pace indeed. The last time by Tractor setting a 52.7, Vale a 52.4. So the gap did come down on that previous lap, and it looks like it's just little by little across the 3 sectors of the lap. No major, well, it looks like Tractor actually just picked up a drive-through penalty, so that's going to make it easy for Vale. He's going to be able to take that position. Just wait till the end of the lap, or indeed the next couple, for Tractor to serve that penalty. But Steve, we spoke about these fine margins. We saw the fine margins in qualifying. Just shows you how hard these guys are pushing, because a track limits penalty is very costly indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, we said it at the beginning of the race, with the curbs easy to run over, very easy to fall into the trap of just running that little bit wider and keeping your foot in. That's the thing. You keep your foot in. If you gain any sort of advantage time wise, then that's it, you will get that track cut warning. And obviously Patrick's just done that one too many times, and he's now got to serve this drive through within 3 laps of it being issued. So he doesn't have to come in this time, but he is indeed coming in, and he's going to serve that, and that hands Vale the position. Further up the field, we have Clark in the 22 Porsche looking to put Workman under a little bit of pressure in the number 5 Porsche. So this is an out-and-out battle between the 2 Porsches, but Clark has been closing this gap down ever so slightly for the last few laps, and he's closing in now within around about half a second back, so he's definitely looking to put Workman under some pressure as soon as possible.
And indeed, that penalty for Tractor, dropping him outside the top 10, but elevating Delors, who we saw fighting for the podium early on. He's now up to 9th place, so he's still managed to recover to a pretty strong position. He's 8 and a bit seconds off the back of Vale. But yeah, Clark, the man on the move at the moment, closing up towards Berkman for what will be 4th place. A very strong showing from Clark in his first appearance this season. And it'll be interesting to see, because the 2 cars are exactly the same, bar the setups and the driver at the wheel, whether this one's going to be a tricky move to make for Clark. His best option is probably to get a good run out of Ravazza and use the slipstream down towards Tamburello as the clock ticks below 5 minutes. The final 5 minutes of this race here at Imola. Time has certainly flown by, Steve. I don't know about you, but it seems to have gone very quickly with the battles playing out on track. Tim Krul leads the way ahead of Yannick Valendux. We see Berkman gets wide on the exit of Ravazza. That's going to hand the position to Clark, and he doesn't need to think twice or make any kind of dives to get the move done. He's through, handing the position to him. He's up to 4th place with a 7-second margin to Sem Spenkelink up the road. But let's see if Clark can hold on to this one, or whether Workman will be able to fight back. So it's Kroll leads away from Valendux. Spenkelink rounds out the podium. He's now a further 14 seconds behind Valendux, so that gap has been extended over the second half of the race. Then it's Clark, Workman, Putman, Pound, Vale, Delors and Tafas rounding out the top 10. Tafas, your top AM driver at the moment, so he's going to be taking a victory in class. But here's Ian Thompson in the 666 Camaro, looking like he's closing up on the back of Suke Vervat for what is 2nd place in the AM class, but 11th overall. So this battle very much still to be played out in front of us. Thompson looking, well, he started 18th on the grid. He's now up into 12th, so he's certainly had a positive race so far this evening, and there's certainly another position in the offing, but he has got the indicator on, Steve. I don't think he's going to be pulling over to let anyone else by, but it looks like he might have the pace to get past that Aston Martin in front.
Yeah, well, I think the indicator's just selling the Aston Martin a dummy, isn't it? It's mirror signal manoeuvre to the left, and he's gonna pull a BMW manoeuvre and go to the right. But he's just got it a little bit sideways there, coming out of the hairpin, and that's just cost him some time as we jest. So that's undone quite a lot of his hard work, and that's the thing, isn't it, about this close racing? You know, we're talking about them catching up to tenths of a second a lap, and then that one little mistake there, too greedy with the loud pedal, and that's potentially cost him half a second or more, which could easily equate to, you know, half a dozen or so laps. As we see, he's really unsettled him there, and he's running wide. But yeah, that could have cost him half a dozen or so laps worth of work, and it's very difficult with only 2.5 minutes left on the clock now to see that he's going to get any of that back. We are now coming towards the end of this race, and you know, Tim Krull has just dominated, hasn't he? He's pretty much done what he's needed to do. He's controlled the gaps, he's pushed when he's had to. You know, when we were thinking the gaps, or I was thinking wrongly that the gaps were coming down, and it looked like we might have a grandstand finish, Tim Krull just managed to put the foot down a little bit more, found a bit more pace, and just sort of said to the guys behind, you know, no, I've got this, I can do this, anything you guys can do time wise I can match it. And he's done that, he's done what he needs to do, and he's extended the lead out to 13 seconds now from Valenduk. Valenduk's extended his lead out to 14 seconds from Spenkelink. Spenkelink, I don't think, I said earlier he'll be happy with his third place, it's a bag full of points, but I think if on reflection he'll probably be a little bit disappointed with himself at this race, because I think he could have been a lot closer to certainly to second place, if not in fact in that second place.
So as Krull crosses the timing line to start what will be the final lap here this evening in this third round, Sim Racing Hub International GT4 Season 2, he leads the way from Valenduk, and this top three have been dealing with traffic over the last few laps, so I wonder if that's played a factor in the gaps extending and reducing and extending once again. Valenduk on the right hand side of your screen, rounding Tamburello as the race leader heads up towards Tosa for the final time. Further down the order, Spenkelink in third ahead of Clark, and in fifth place is Workman, who hasn't been able to fight back and try and regain that position from Clark that he lost running wide through the final corner at Ravazza. Krull's got some traffic in front of him. There's a couple of drivers battling up the road. I believe that's the McLaren of Callum Boyd and Dimitri Schenk, and they're battling for 19th and 20th positions on the road, but they will be taking the checkered flag this time by as the timer runs out. They are getting the blue flag, but of course they're locked in battle trying to make a move on one another as Krull closes in behind, and it looks like Schenk might be pulling over to secede the position to Krull. There we go. Janetta goes over to the right hand side. Good fair racing indeed from Schenk to do that when the leader's coming through and you're getting the blue flag. It's good driving too, and plenty of good driving from these drivers up and down the field, especially in relation to those blue flags. But as Krull rounds the final corner at Ravazza and heads towards the line, he's going to take victory in the third round. Sim Racing Hub International's second season of GT4s here at Imola, with Yannick Valenduk closely following in to take second place and the podium in the 301 BMW. Then it's Sem Spenkelink we're going to have to wait for a little while, Steve. Best part of 14 seconds to cross the line and take his third place on the podium, with Clark in fourth. He's now got an extended margin over Workman, so as he crosses the line, Spenkelink giving that KTM a little bit of a shimmy across the line. He's happy with that, and actually it looked like Clark had closed the gap towards Spenkelink on that final tour. Then with Workman taking fifth ahead of Michael Hutman, Luke Pound is going to be crossing the line next in seventh place ahead of Xander Vale, who definitely had closed up towards the end there, with Delors, who was in the podium positions, then had a drive-through penalty following the pit stops. He drops down to ninth, but he'll be happy to recover to that position, with Evan Tafas in the 75 Aston Martin taking victory in the AM class, but 10th place overall with Suki Burbath second in the AM class, 11th overall ahead of Ian Thompson, who rounds out the podium for the AM categories. We see Lermans going deep there on Van der Linden. Last gasp effort to make up a final position. That would have been 15th place. But no, Lerman's going to have to settle for 16th as we see Thompson, Tractor, Mosley, Van der Linden and Lermans here on screen crossing the line in 16th place, with Herkstra following in 17th ahead of Arvidsson and Boyd, the last to cross the line in the 59 McLaren on his first appearance this season. But Steve, we saw an interesting race there. Actually, I've just looked down to the YouTube chat to see that Nicholas Malott says he's got disconnected right at the end of the race there. So it doesn't look like he's been scored. So that'll be very difficult for him to have dropped out of those positions. We saw him up inside the top 10 and looking very competitive indeed. I'll check the timing screens to see where he ended up. Actually only completed 18 laps. So around the pit stop phase, he dropped out, which is a shame to see. But fantastic driving from Krull, because he did get up into that lead position early on and dealt with all the traffic in the second half of that race to extend the gap to Valenduk and Spenkelink. It was a classy drive from the Porsche driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good drives throughout the field. I mean, just seeing the replay now, obviously a couple of incidents there that we didn't see at the back of the grid on the start. Generally a relatively good start. Everyone fairly safely through. But yeah, there was some good racing, there was some hard racing, there was some, it's really disappointing to hear when drivers do get disconnected like that, because it's not what we want. We want to see people battling to the flag, but unfortunately with sim racing it is just one of the horrors that can befall a driver when they do everything they can, but the good old disconnects come along and spoil things. As we just see a little bit of carnage there. Again in the replay, but yeah, generally some good GT4 racing tonight. Good mix of cars in battling. We saw some cars just having to settle down, and just took some guys a little bit of time to get into the rhythm and to get things sorted. But yeah, all in all, fantastic race tonight, Tim.
Some very clean driving indeed, and I believe we've got our top three finishers in the green room at the moment, so we'll bring them in to talk about their race result this evening. So I'm down in the interview room with our podium finishers this evening. Tim Krull, Victor at Imola, ahead of Yannick Valenduk and Sem Spenkelink. And we'll go to Tim first. Tim, it was a close qualifying. You got yourself up onto the front row, and then it looked like once you'd got the lead from Delors, you were fairly unchallenged for the rest of the race.
Oh, thank you, first of all. That was pretty close. Yeah, it was 48 thousandths or something, I suspect. And it was my teammate, so there was a little, fight. But yeah, I got the lead because I faked the outside, and then he made an error. And then, I just got away, basically. But I think the pace of the top 3, 4, 5 or something was pretty consistent. So, yeah, it was a bit of luck maybe as well.
Indeed, but in that second half of the race, after the stops, you certainly had to deal with some traffic. And did you find that you were using that traffic to extend your gap? It looked like after the stops, it was around 9-8 seconds. But then after another 15 minutes, it was up towards 14 seconds. Was it? Were you deciding you were getting through cleanly? Was that what you think were helping build your margin?
I think my pace on the second stint was better in general, because I did more 50 point whatevers than 51s in the second one anyway. And yeah, I just got passed on led by on the straights, I think, so I could get a little slipstream and then go on. So I think it helped me in some way. Blue flags are always, it's kind of hit or miss, but it went all right for me in this one, so I'm very happy.
Good, and indeed, at Brands Hatch, you finished second. Then last time out, Suzuka, fourth place in the running. This evening, you're Victor. So looking forward to Spa, the next race in 2 weeks' time. What do you think your chances are there in the Porsche Cayman?
Oof. We just have to see. It's tricky, Spa. It's not my favorite track, but I'll do my definitely best to keep at the front. So
Well, from one Tim to another, congratulations on your result this evening.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll go over to our second place finisher, Yannick Valenduk. Yannick, a really strong race from you in the BMW. You look to have the pace on your competitors throughout this evening's event. How was your race?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a pretty good race, especially the first sim was interesting. I got passed right away by Sam at the start. He somehow was in front of me, even though I was qualified in front of him, and I couldn't close the gap. So was a bit of well, busy action. I also got tapped from behind by I think Michiel Hutman. And then I started to close up to the top two again and fight a lot of fighting with Alexander, and finally got past after a failed attempt first. But then I found out that I had put way too little fuel actually, so I had to pit a bit early because I had miscalculated it. Luckily, I could fix it for the pit stop, but I had a bit of a slow stop, and then I fell quite far behind Tim. So I thought I'd just drive steady and hope he would get a drive-through or something. Had a bit of bad luck as well with the traffic, so he extended the gap in the end, but still pretty happy.
With your second podium in a row, it must feel nice to still be, be in the top three again. How are you enjoying, the BMW? It's certainly a different car to some of the other GT4s and has some unique strengths. We saw you were closing up on the Caymans in the straight line. So how did you find it around the Imola circuit?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the BMW is it feels quite heavy, but then it's so fast on the straights that that you make it up. I also had just 0 aero on it, so I could make as much back on the straights as possible, and it worked quite well. I think I could have even had pole position had I had a bit of more luck because one of my laps was ruined. But yeah, it's quite a good car, I think, for Imola. It should be one of the top contenders here, I think.
And then, as I asked Tim, looking forward to Spa in 2 weeks' time, how do you think the BMW will go there? Is that a track that you think suits the car or indeed suits your driving?
I think it suits the car, yeah. And I think I had the fastest lap on Spa in the pre-season testing. So, well, that promises something. So, yeah, we'll see. I'll put some practice in for sure.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations, Yannick, on your result this evening.
Thank you.
And we'll go over to Sem, our third place finisher and season 1 champion. Sem, an up and down race for you this evening. You caught yourself in battle earlier on, and then really once you'd got ahead of those guys, struggled to close the gap to the top two.
Yeah, definitely. First off, I was a runner-up last season.
Runner-up.
But nevertheless, I think I'm quite lucky to be here with Alexander's penalty. Really gutted about that. I can actually understand it, and maybe it's not completely his fault. The track limits are so unforgiving here. I mean, I personally had 2 just in the first lap while I wasn't even off track, but I don't know what happened, so I had to drive quite cautiously the entire race, which didn't help. At the start there was quite some fighting going on. Of course, all the other cars quite had to run on me on the straight, so I saw just Yannick just breezing past, and then I kept making little mistakes, which didn't help. But after that, once everything settled a little bit, I had a bit more pace than the guys behind, and kind of got somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and could just drive my pace.
We see so many, the GT4 field, different shapes and sizes and sounds and power outputs, weights, etc. How does the KTM compare amongst those cars? Because a lot of these, some of these cars like the Ginetta is really good in the turns but misses out in the straight lines, and then something like the Camaro or Aston is very good down the straights. Where does the KTM rank amongst the other cars out on track?
Yeah, so I think its deficit is its very small engine. It has no torque, so it doesn't go well from the corners onto the straights, and not quite a high top speed either. So that's where it struggled. I had to run 0 wing to somewhat compete, while the default aggressive had something like 7. And then where its strength lies, that to gain the advantage of the KTM, you really have to just throw it around, like really mash it into the corners and then commit yourself there. That's where its strength lies.
Looking forward to Spa then. Like you say, that the car struggles in a straight line. How do you think you'll fare, of course, with a very flat out opening sector through Eau Rouge and up towards Les Combes, and then on the back section towards the bus stop chicane? How do you think the KTM will get on next time out?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one again. Perhaps the second half of the season will suit the KTM better. I just have to nail every exit onto the straights, otherwise they're just going to eat me alive. So we'll see what's going to happen.
We might get some rain playing in as well, of course, being Spa. You never know. You went well at Brands Hatch. Is that something you'll be hoping for?
Yeah, I'll do a little rain dance for Spa, I guess. Then I could be up there.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on your result anyway this evening, Sem, a third place finish, and congratulations to all the drivers this evening for their result at Imola.
Cheers.
And we'll head back up to the commentary box to Steve.
Yeah, some fantastic and honest interviews there. But as we said, Tim, I think all the drivers very, very happy to be on the podium, and some well-earned points and a good insight into what the guys are expecting at Spa. Obviously, Sem acknowledging the fact he's going to have to be on his A game just to stay in the fight at Spa, because he's going to certainly be on the back foot. But I think Valenduk in the BMW will certainly be on the front foot, I think, at Spa with that car, because I think the BMW will be pretty strong at the next round.
It was interesting to hear, wasn't it, Steve, that those drivers are really having to find setup tricks to benefit their car's strengths here at Imola. And it's from one extreme to another, isn't it? This very technical circuit here, and then we go to what seems a very flat out. I say flat, it's anything but flat. I mean, a very quick circuit like Spa. Interested to see what kind of racing we get there, because we've seen how powerful the slipstream is, and I wonder if people might, be working together in qualifying or forming trains of cars in the race to really benefit their lap time. It's worlds apart from the twisty confines here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's as we alluded to tonight with the Ginettas, where they need to hang on to the back of the car in front, and I think that's going to be times 10 at Spa, as you said, through Eau Rouge and onto the straight, and then down the back straight as well. There's just going to be so few opportunities for such as the Ginetta to take advantage of its strong points, which are the brakes and through the corners, because it's going to be a case of flat out. I mean, maximum full throttle around Spa is for a very high percentage of the lap, and that's not going to suit the Ginetta. And as Sem said, it's certainly the KTM's going to struggle a little bit with that as well. But I think these guys, there's one thing for sure, they'll all turn up with their A game. They'll all turn up to give us a good fight, and they'll all be battling hard for those points, the valuable points that make up this GT4 championship.
Well, thank you very much once again, Steve, for your insight into the action this evening. Broadcast brought to you by SimSport Solutions, and it was an exciting event here at Imola. It was Tim Krul who was rather untouchable in the second half of that one to take victory here ahead of Yannick Valenduk and Sem Spenkelink, but the championship rumbles on to Spa-Francorchamps, a very different circuit and a different challenge indeed. Thank you to all of those who are watching on the YouTube. If you enjoyed what you saw this evening, please like the stream and subscribe to the Sim Racing Hub International TV channel to keep up to date with all the racing action across multiple types of racing, whether it be GT4s, GT3s or beyond. So thank you very much for joining us on the stream this evening. From Steve and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time out for the battle at Spa-Francorchamps in 2 weeks' time on the 6th of April. Same time, same place. We'll see you then.